All right, this is the last session that we're recording this afternoon, and then we're going to get into a quick workshop afterwards. We're going to go through reports and dashboards. Then we're going to keep it interactive, get you to download some stuff from the App Exchange that we talked about, and then we're going to finish off the afternoon with customer success and building revenue through customer support. So now, we talked about a lot of theoretical ways that you can gather information about leads, and prospects, and the sales pipeline, or the sales funnel, qualifying, things like that. All of this feeds into what's referred to as the sales pipeline. And really the pipeline is just all of your opportunities gathered into one place with an amount or value attached to them. And it's not a single value, but it's multiple values. So it's the value of the overall deal, but then it's the percentage likelihood of it closing. So that's going to be something that we'll talk about here shortly, but one of the things I want to start off with is at this stage for companies like yours, and as your companies grow, I want you to start setting an expectation that you guys measure this stuff, that the CRM is a single source of truth for your organization. Decisions are made based on what's inside of the CRM. And I can't stress this enough. If everyone understands that expectation from the day you start, it's way easier than trying to put the horse back in the barn after it's out, right? If you adopt it, in year 3 and go, okay, now we've got a CRM and everyone has to try to change their behavior and do this now this way, what I'm suggesting to you guys is at this stage is the right time to adopt and embrace the use of a CRM and make it your single source of truth. So sales pipeline. This is one of the things that we talked about this morning, right? Overall, when your leads get qualified and they have passed and become an opportunity, I want you to create a process for the team. But both the team and the management need to understand what this process means, how things are going to happen, how things move through the funnel. Develop a common language, right? We've talked about this for the last 2 days now. What's a lead? Make sure everybody understands what it is. What's an account? What's an opportunity? What's a contact? Right? Clear definition for anybody who's in the organization so they understand what it means, because the worst thing that you can have happen is having one set of expectations here and someone saying something else over here and miscommunication causing bad behavior. What's the sales pipeline? When does a lead become an opportunity? Again, Greg touched on that this morning. Using the BANT process, that's one of many processes. We use it. I mean, it's not bulletproof, but we use it because it's easy. And for inexperienced salespeople, they can understand this system quite easily. Defining the stages of the sales process. Going to be different for every organization, different industries, but you can define them into several stages. Each stage has a weighting, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. Can't stress this enough. Putting honest data in is the only way the accuracy of the information you can get out of the CRM. Right? So the more honest, and I tell this to people over and over again, there's no good sense in putting false data in there because it's just going to bite you in the butt, right? It leads to making poor decisions, and you're going to be making decisions in the future based on what the sales pipeline looks like, what the percentage likelihood of closing a deal is. It may be the difference between hiring someone this quarter or next quarter, right? So if everyone understands that the information that is in there is accurate, then you can make informed decisions at you. After this session, we're going to work on creating dashboards and leveraging pre-canned reports and forecasting. Right? This, again, all of these data points that we're helping or encouraging you guys to put into your system are all going to show up in very nice-looking canned reports and dashboards that you can look at every morning. And Greg and I used to do this when we went into LiveLens. Very first thing we do every morning, pull up the dashboard, look at the activities, look at the reports, and it almost became sort of one of the things that we did over coffee. Said, hey, what does this activity look like? What is what are we doing on the customer support or customer success side? What does the engagement level look like? When are renewals coming up? These are all things that you're going to pull out of your dashboards and reporting. And again, if it becomes part of your morning routine or part of your process, all that information is just at your fingers touch.
You actually said what I was going to say.
Okay, that happens. So the common language, a lead. We're going to reinforce the things that we've told you in the last couple of days. Again, for the purposes of this exercise and for everyone in this room, you guys by now should know a lead is a person you have information about or who has expressed an interest in you, right? Leads can be qualified or unqualified. Right? One lead, one record. Right? Qualified or unqualified, one lead, one record. When does a lead become an opportunity? Anyone? Yes. Once they've become qualified, they have budget, they have authority, they have need, they have timeline. You may or may not have established a competitor. An account. The qualified lead can become an account. One account can have many associated records, including opportunities, contacts, etc. You have a question?
Yeah, so then why is
Greg?
it qualified or unqualified on the lead group? When doesn't it, once it's qualified, then it's converted into an account opportunity and contact?
So that's actually a really good question. So if you were to exactly follow what we prescribed yesterday, as soon as the lead is qualified, you would convert that into being an account. But in some organizations, they may have a process where a lead becomes qualified and it gets handed to the sales team, and sales has 24 hours to choose to convert that lead or to hand it back. And so you may have that period, I guess, of a window where sales can choose whether or not they're going to accept that lead or not. And so that's where you would, there's a number of scenarios where you might have a situation like that, but that would be one example. Does that make sense?
We talked a little bit about that in marketing qualified leads this morning. It's the validation process or timing. Again, I said you can associate, one account can have many associated records, opportunities, contacts, etc. Familiar with account-based selling or account-based marketing? I mean, I'm going to drastically oversimplify this, but for us, we may pick the top 200 customers or the top 100 customers that we're going after, and each one of those accounts may have multiple contacts within them, and we're going to say, and I'll pick a, Starbucks is the account that we're going to try to sell into. We're going to look for multiple ways in there. So the parent account may be Starbucks. There may be child accounts associated with it. We may be looking for different ways in, but we are going to focus our efforts, or we're going to have a campaign-based selling or marketing around a specific named account. That would be a situation where an account-based selling or account-based marketing would be working. Parent and child relationships, we could probably spend an hour talking about this, but I think an oversimplified version. Greg, would you like to say that it's kind of, I think it's, how would you simplify the parent-child relationship?
I mean, the easy example would be a large multinational where you have Coca-Cola worldwide would have a child account, which is Coca-Cola United States, Coca-Cola Canada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or, you might get a massive company like Chevrolet, which has many different brands under it that are all separate incorporated entities. And actually, I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm making an assumption as to their corporate structure, but that would be an example of where you would have child accounts.
Yeah, the example that I like to use is a franchise system. So where there's the corporate headquarters and then individual franchisees may be owned by separate ownership groups, things like that. So contacts. We talked about this again. An account can have multiple contacts, and that just makes sense, right? Where you can have multiple. You're trying different people within the organization to reach out to, build a connection, fill out as much information as you can about them, and then opportunities. An account can have multiple opportunities. Should always be qualified. Can be at different stages in the sales cycle, right? And each stage has a corresponding probability of closing, and that's what I touched on off the top, right? When you're looking at your sales pipeline, it is the total value of the deal, multiplied by the stage that it's at, which gives you a weighted average or a weighted value of the pipeline. Perfect example. So we talked about the different stages. In this case, this is one of the examples that we used recently. So prospecting, qualification, needs analysis, value proposition, proposal quote, negotiation. So each one of these stages has a likelihood of close attached to it. So, typically in a funnel situation, prospecting is the first stage. So there's lots of different opportunities that are at the prospecting stage. And the likelihood of those closing is 5%. And I'm arbitrarily picking that up. Maybe in your industry it's 10%, or maybe it's 1%. But the point is that's the widest part of the funnel. That's where most people fall in that very first stage. Second stage is qualification. right? So you may be trying to qualify them as an opportunity, qualifying them as a proper buyer. So you've worked them through, they've moved from being a lead to a opportunity, so they've met one qualification criteria or the BANT qualification, but you may be working them through a little bit further and trying to get more information and discern, is this a $10 deal or is it a $100 deal, right? Like these are the things that you're going to be working through in the process. At that stage, maybe there's a 10% likelihood. The needs analysis, you're diving a little bit deeper. You've had a couple of conversations with them. You know, James and I have a relationship now. We know that he's got budget. We know he has authority. His timing isn't, he's not entirely certain on it, but roughly we're pretty sure it's going to be like a $100 deal. Great. Now I'm going to be going through and working with James and say, this is what our product is. This is matched to your needs. This is the stage we're at. Oh, great. We've got agreement or alignment on this. 20%, maybe moving to 50%. Now you're at the value proposition stage. This is the right product for me. We agree to this. We can deliver what you need. Perfect. Here's a quote or proposal. I feel comfortable and confident that based on the conversations that James and I have been having, there's a pretty high likelihood that this deal is going to go forward. Doesn't mean that we're going to get it 100% of the time, but 75% of the time when I reach the proposal and quote stage with people just like James, we close the deal.
I think it's worth noting there that initially, the probability of closing the deal for most of you, you're not actually going to know what that number is. And then over time, again, because you're using a CRM, you're able to run reports and say, okay, out of all the opportunities that we got to the proposal quote stage this year, what percent converted into sales? 60%. Okay, I know that now. I can update that, and that's what we're going to work with as an assumption moving forward. And that's, you're going to be able to do that very easily. You can run that report once you build it once in Salesforce in a minute. It's as simple as pressing a refresh button. But initially, you don't have any data to do that with. So it's somewhat arbitrary initially as to what those percents are going to be.
Yeah, and I think probably the takeaway, like I said, there's as many stages as you want to make them, and the probability or likelihood of closing, you're just going to get better at over time. But I would suggest early stage, less likelihood of closing. Later stage, higher likelihood of closing. To Greg's point, proper use of a CRM is going to be able to give you that exact number. And the more you do it, the more often you win business, the finer a point you get on that. And then ultimately, I want you to look at the last one, right? Closed one, fantastic. Great. Move on to the next stage. Closed lost. This is one of those ones where a lot of companies are like, oh crap, we lost the business. Move on to the next one. But what I want you to think about is, why did you lose? We're going to come back to that. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. I want you to track all through the whole process, because the process, there's tells in every one of those. But first I want to talk to you about, in the absence of closing deals, right? So many companies at this stage, you don't have a ton of closed deals. You're working through, how long is this sales cycle? How long is this going to take? How much do I have to have in my pipeline before it spits out a closed deal at the end? But in the absence of that, measure activities. Right? You're measuring activities, but don't get fooled by them. And we touched on this a little bit this morning when we were talking about how you're working leads. Right? A lot of people will create activities and create a lot of fluster around what they're doing. Don't perceive busyness as effectiveness. Right? We like to say that emails are good, but phone calls are better, and demos are the best. And really what we're saying in there is, with your new salespeople, or with yourselves as new salespeople, I want you not to get fooled by the activities that you're doing, but measure all of the activities that you're doing and then look at them and say, what's providing the best bang for the buck? What should we be focusing more on? We need to be doing them all, but if you have a salesperson that is only doing emails, they're probably afraid to pick up the phone. If you're not getting to the demo stage, that may be indicative of some other problem that you may have. And what we've got here is a pipeline success formula, right? So, sorry for some of you, but there is math involved here. But what we've got here is QPV, which is the qualified sales pipeline value, right? What the total value of the pipeline is, divided by the average sales cycle velocity. We're going to talk about velocity here. And then times by the average sales win rate. So for every 100 deals that you have, every 100 opportunities, how many are coming out the other side as a win? Again, to Greg's point earlier, we're going to be tracking all this stuff through your CRM, and you're going to be very easily be able to tell me exactly what those numbers are, because all of that stuff is happening in the CRM. Is your question?
Where are the parentheses in that one?
No. I would suggest that they are between the Q and the V.
Mathematically, though, I don't know that you need them. It doesn't matter.
There you go.
It's going to work out to the same number.
Anybody else? Let's pause here for a second. So qualified pipeline value. The key is qualified. Misrepresentation hurts everyone. Right? This is what I talked about right off the top about being honest. Honesty equals accuracy. Leads and inquiries don't count. They lead to bad decisions. So everyone gets excited when someone submits something, a form on their website, or just randomly calls in out of the blue. If you get fixated too much on that, it'll start leading to bad decisions, and I don't want you to be doing that. Right? When is an opportunity? Must be bank qualified. Right? These are the things, these are the habits that keep you in a good place. Is there a realistic chance that these people are going to buy? At the end of the day, based on the conversations you're having, be honest with yourself. Is there a chance that they're going to buy? And then ultimately, and this is going to sound weird for companies at your stage, do you want them as a customer? There is such thing as bad customers. Right? I think we alluded to it yesterday when we ran the numbers on one of the customers that our largest invoice customer every month, we were actually losing money on when we worked out all of the math. So there are times when you can actually decide, okay, probably don't want these folks as a customer, or we need to change the expectations around that. Anything you want to add? Velocity. How long does it take to close a deal? From the time they get passed from marketing to sales to the time you have a decision made, closed won or closed lost, how long does that take? Right? Your CRM is going to be able to tell you that very succinctly, down to the day. Good news. You're also going to be able to break it down a little bit further, and this is why the honesty and accuracy in reporting is so important. As you're moving them through stages, how long does it take to get from one stage to the next? You know, are you too long in qualification? Are you too long in needs analysis? Right? The bad news is, the longer it sticks in a particular stage, the less likelihood there is to move forward. And sometimes it just needs to be, kicked a little bit to move forward. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. But as a founder or CEO or someone managing a sales group, you may want to look, and you definitely want to look at the different stages and how long you're in each stage, and be honest with yourself and take the salesperson to task. How come it's been this long in this stage? What can we do to move it? Right? And sometimes it's simple things and very honest things like the decision maker went on summer vacation, or Joe got fired. Okay, what do we do now? Should that still be at this stage now, based on the information that we have? If the answer is yes, great. What can we do to move it forward? If the answer is no, what expectations do we have to reset now? You want to repeat the question?
What I was asking is, can we apply Six Sigma methodology to streamline the process?
Well, if you have somebody who knows how to do that, you could do that. That might be over-engineering a solution. I think for most of the companies here, something like Six Sigma might be a bit of a big pill to swallow. Again, for most of the companies here, it's what is the minimal viable something that you can do at this stage, and I don't think Six Sigma has ever fallen into that category of anything. Speaking as a guy who's worked for a company that has deployed that type of thing, but what might be better is could we apply some kind of agile or variation of agile methodology to this, or how can we do that? So you do need to figure out some kind of methodological solution to incrementally improving it, but how you do that, I think, is really going to depend on the company. One thing I will say though, now that I've stolen the mic and the attention from John is, for CloudKettle, we're incredibly biased towards SaaS companies. That's who we service. Or we service a lot of sometimes PaaS companies, so platform as a service. And so most of our clients, live and die by MRR. So how much money does each client hand over each month? And if you're working a deal and that deal is worth $120,000, which would probably be pretty exciting for most of the companies in this room, if it's worth $120,000 as an annual contract, that means it's worth about $10,000 a month. And that means that every day that deal doesn't close, you're losing $333-ish. So when you're thinking about things as a founder, or you're talking to your salespeople, like, hey, Steve, why isn't this deal closing? Like, you know what, some other stuff came up, I just couldn't make that phone call today. It's like, that's great, you just lost me $333. And, sometimes you have to keep your partner in business honest, and John and I are pretty hard on each other. We have the luxury of doing that because we've been working together for a long time. And sometimes you have to, instruct your salespeople because they don't intuitively understand that every day they don't close that deal, the company's losing 100, 200, whatever that number is, depends on the size of your deal. But a $40,000 annual contract that is 5 days late, that's hundreds and hundreds of dollars that your company lost because that salesperson was a little too busy and didn't have time to make that follow-up call. And that happens in real life. People are really busy at startups. So, you do really have to pay attention to sales velocity and measure that and make sure everybody understands that if you're billing on a monthly or an annual basis, you're some kind of subscription cycle, any day that deal doesn't close is a day you lost money. A deal that's worth $100K that closes 1 week late is still not worth $100K anymore. You've lost some of that money, especially if you're in a super cash flow sensitive situation and you're taking out loans or accepting investment in order to supplement your revenue. When you're doing that, that deal not closing may not just be the amount of money that you lost in that week of revenue or whatever the case may be. It may also be that you had to give up 5% of your company in order to get enough cash to keep the doors open.
Yep. And those are all very real scenarios that we're describing to you. One of the things I did want to mention is what can be done to move an opportunity. Right, so Greg's talking about a deal getting stuck and the amount of time that it's costing you and the money that is associated with that. Sometimes there's things that you can do as a salesperson or an organization just to unstick an opportunity. It may be introducing someone new. Right? Hey, our VP of sales wants to talk to you, or we have a new feature that we're releasing and our product person wants to talk to you about that because we think it's really important to how we perceive the value for our product is to you. Or in some cases, and we've done this, hey, I'm going to be in New York next week. I'd love to sit down and meet with you face to face. Or are you going to this event? Love to see you. Basically, find some compelling reason to unstick the opportunity and move them along. So again, make a compelling event, add a new person into the mix. These are ways that you can, kind of graciously or gracefully unstick an opportunity. And then the other thing, and this is hard, and this is really hard with salespeople, when is an opportunity no longer an opportunity? Right? Salespeople will always tell you, hey, I can get them, I'm going to close them, I'm going to close them next month. Yeah, Joe, you said that 3 months ago. At some point you have to decide that this is no longer really a deal. And it's not the salesperson who's going to make that decision in most cases, but I go back to honesty equals accuracy. So and we do this a lot, right? If it's something gets stuck in a stage for too long, we just decide that's not real. That deal is dead, or we'll wind it back to an earlier stage. And if the salesperson can revive the deal, revive the opportunity, then we're happy to bring it back up in the pipeline. But in the short term, we're no longer making decisions based on that piece of information. Yeah, shoot. Either or. If the deal isn't completely dead, right? If you're just moving it back from let's call it negotiation back to qualification, and that could be a bunch of different scenarios. It could be a change of contact or something else where you need to restart the sale process. not a net new opportunity. But if you decide that it's completely dead, then it may be a whole new opportunity.
And for a lot of organizations, that would depend on the organization. So, we would deal with organizations that do both these things. So one organization compensates their lead gen people on every opportunity that's created, and then they get a bonus if that opportunity turns into a sale. Whereas we deal with another one where they actually give their salespeople an extra bump if they create a net new opportunity. And so in this case, if you reopened the old opportunity, the lead gen person gets the bonus, whereas if you create a new opportunity unfairly, the salesperson gets the bonus. So there's not really a correct answer. A lot of what we talk about for Salesforce, there's definitely right and wrong things to do, but there's also a lot of nuance where it's like, okay, some of the process has to be tailored towards what your compensation structure is and how that works. And one of the last things you want is that somebody on the team is feeling like they're getting robbed from commissions, and that causes a huge amount of friction in startups, or, well, sales teams in general, I would say. Yeah.
All right, your sales win rate. Talked about this briefly before, but I want you to track all possible outcomes. Right? So you win. Fantastic. That's great. High fives all the way around. What if your competitor wins? Oh, boo. That sucks. Here's a little piece of advice, and I give this to everyone that we talk to, and most people go, really? And if you lose a deal to a competitor, take the time, swallow your pride, thank them for the opportunity to try to win their business, ask them why you lost the business. And I've been doing this for 20-odd years now almost, and I always do that, and I could count on one hand with fingers left over the number of times people have said no.
I can't remember in the near past a time where somebody did not agree to have that phone call and explain to me why we didn't get the business.
And it's really important at this stage for you guys to understand if you're losing to a competitor, what's the reason? And there's a few reasons you're going to want to do that, right? It sets you up for the next time, right? If I keep losing for the same reason, well, maybe this is a feature I need to add now, right?
Or if you know about the feature fallacy, you'll realize maybe that isn't the case.
True.
But you might say, okay, we need a competitive kill sheet for this scenario because we keep losing against our competitor because XYZ. We're going to build into our competitive kill sheet that if we know they're being investigated, we're going to bring up the fact that they cannot do this thing.
These are little seeds that you plant. But the other thing that I think is important to put out here for you is if you're gracious in defeat and leave that door open and keep those communications going, you can check back with them in 6 months because maybe it didn't work out for that competitor. And if you've left that door open, even just a crack, and you've been gracious in defeat, they would be interested in perhaps talking to you. Right? And then maybe that thing that they told you that you didn't do or the reason that you lost, you now do better or now do differently. Or they decided that, hey, those guys were jerks and it really didn't matter that we wanted that piece. These guys seem awesome. Let's go with them instead or give them another shot.
Or that person goes to a new company and needs to buy your solution all over again.
True enough. And oftentimes, listen, we buy from people we like, right? So it's always good to be positive, be gracious, and be inquisitive. Prospect implements an internal solution, right? Sometimes if you're selling into large organizations, that may become a pet project for someone else. Wow, you know what, we really thought we needed this as a solution, but then we ended up talking to Bob over in tech, and well, he's provided this solution for us. Again, I go back to the earlier comment, if you come back and you say, why did we lose? And they say, yeah, Bob in IT is going to do this, it's going to be his personal project. That's actually good news because you know what? Bob has a short attention span. It seemed like a good idea for Bob at the time because he was on the bench and wasn't doing anything else. But eventually Bob gets put onto another project, and guess what? Bob's interest has disappeared. He's no longer interested in doing the project. You've left that door open. You can come back, check in 3 or 6 months, and hey, we were talking in September, and you decided that Bob was going to do this project. How's it going? As luck may have it, Bob no longer works here, or Bob is doing a different project. Oh shoot, you know what, John, I've been meaning to call you guys back. We really liked your presentation, but they wanted to do it internally, and I was dead set against it, but now Bob's doing something different, so yeah, I'd be happy to pick up that conversation with you again. So again, leave the door open, figure out why you didn't win the business. That's really important. And then the other thing, and this happens a lot, status quo or do nothing. We thought it was a priority, there was another garbage can fire, we forgot about it entirely, 6 months have gone by, and oh yeah, right, that was important in September, it's now April, it's still important, I forgot all about it because we got distracted by something else. So again, you leave the door open, you're friendly, you check back in 3-6 months, and it gives you an opportunity to just sort of re-engage with them and say, hey, really liked what we were doing, the conversations we were having, love to have a chance to talk to you again. More often than not, very friendly and well received. So, why is the information important? Well, probably one of the biggest reasons, least of which is you should be, how you're running your organization. But a lot of investors are going to want to know that this is the way that you're thinking. At this stage, for a lot of folks, you're going to be sort of pitching business, or you have already pitched business and saying, hey, I'm looking for some investment. They want to know that you're thinking this way. These are little measures that they'll be asking you, hey, what's your sales pipeline look like? We talked about this yesterday. I would go in, every time I was going to pitch, I would come in with reports that had been run that morning. So my pipeline accuracy was up to that day, like 8:30 a.m. that day, and I could walk through any given stage and say, we have $600,000 in the value value proposition stage. That is made up of these 4 customers, and this is what I think the likelihood of close is for those. Right? It's your ability to talk intelligently about those things, which will showcase to possible investors that you're on top of the business. Directly impacts cash flow. Right? You're going to be making decisions based on your CRM and the information that's in it, that pipeline and the likelihood of it closing. That will determine how much money marketing gets, when you're going to make a hire in engineering or sales. Like, if there's accurate information in there and you're honest when you put it in, you can start making key decisions based on that. And again, cash flow is king at this stage for a lot of companies because, it's the amount of money coming in that it will fund the ability to do these things to help your company grow. So it impacts marketing activity, right? When you do stuff, how much money you have to do those things. All of these things are important and impacted by the information that's in your CRM. Anything you want to add? And then sales activity, right? When are you going to make other sales hires? Do you have enough bodies on hand to satisfy the leads that are coming in? All of these things are being directly impacted by the information that's coming out of your CRM. And I think if I can probably leave you with one final thought is, if you build this process in at an early stage and it's adopted across your organization and everyone understands that the honesty that goes into it, honest reporting will impact the decisions that you make, CRM will be able to give you all sorts of reports and dashboards and really give you the pulse of your business in a meaningful way that will allow you to grow effectively and efficiently and raise money if you have to, hire in the right way or the right sequence, and be able to track and find intel on the different stages of your organization, our salespeople being effective, our marketing folks being effective, things like that. So this kind of brings us to the end of this portion. We're going to break out here in a second and start doing some dashboards and report building. So pre-canned reports, forecasting, dashboards. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap up? I went through a lot of stuff pretty quickly there. Yeah, shoot.
Do you have any suggestions for integrating like contact information and other information for people who aren't necessarily sales targets, but who are going to be really helpful in pushing the pipeline, like people at industry groups or someone at a government regulator or something like that?
Yeah, we talked about that briefly yesterday, and those people may not necessarily be sales leads, but I would create accounts for them, and then you would have a category that you could then attach them, so maybe their partner or some other means.
Influencer.
Influencer would be a great one. So then you can start running reports on how many influencers do I have, has their impact been. If you're using a marketing automation system, you may want to put them on a red list that says, always send them this information, never send them this information. Right? There's a couple of different layers of sophistication you can get into there, but largely, if you're looking at influencers and other folks like that, create an account and then build out from there. Other questions? All right. Anything you want to add before we wrap?
No, I think I'm good.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys. We're going to take 5 minutes here. We're going to tear down the lights, and we'll start moving in on canned reports and dashboards.